Hi, Astro friends. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Corinne, and today I'll be walking you through Saturn shifts sign to Aries for 12 zodiac signs. So Saturn shifts sign to Aries from May 25th until September 1st. And even though the transits only last for 3 months, you will immediately feel the shifts right away because Saturn wants us to learn the lessons immediately. And you can also take this opportunity to note down what happens during June, July, and August, these 3 months. And it will give you an insight what will unfold when Saturn re-enter Aries in February 2026. And next year, when Saturn enters Aries, Saturn will stay there for 2 years and 2 months' time. And before I start, just a quick introduction to how I read the chart and how you can get the most out of this reading. Please don't skip this part so you can take away the right information that you need. And I use tropical zodiac and the whole sign house system for Vedic astrology in all my readings. I've learned this from Ernst Wilhelm. So if you're into Vedic astrology, you must have heard of him. His approach to Vedic astrology is based on the tropical zodiac. You can actually search his video on YouTube. He has several videos explaining the shift in Vedic astrology, starting off with tropical zodiac, then shift to sidereal, and then now there's a movement back to the tropical zodiac. And there are quite a lot of scholars and also researchers like Ernst and other people, other astrologers who are working to restore and correct this ancient wisdom. So please check your tropical signs and also use the whole sign house system for this reading. And usually I apply Graha Drishti. Graha means planets and Drishti means eyesight. Because in Vedic astrology, each planet, they have their specific eyesights. So for example, like Saturn look at the 3rd, the 7th, and the 10th from its place. So when Saturn transits the 6th house, Saturn is looking at the 3rd from the 6th house. That's the 8th house. The 7th from its position, that's the opposition, the 12th house. And the 10th from its position, that's the 3rd house. So with those aspects, you can get a full picture of what's going on during that period of transits in a personal reading. Because in the video, I will only relate to the aspects that's quite important to the reading. Otherwise, the video would be too long. And this reading is good if you check from your rising sign as well as your moon sign. Because in Vedic astrology, you can read everything from the moon's placement. It means your moon becomes your rising sign, your first house. Because moon rules how we feel, your emotions, our consciousness, and how we see the world. And sometimes this is how you resonate with your experiences in life. It doesn't necessarily exactly what happened to you, but you feel like that's what happens to you. So you can definitely use this reading. You can definitely check your moon sign for this reading. And also, if you're born in the nighttime, or if your moon is super strong in the natal chart, you should definitely pay attention to transit from your moon's placement. And if you only want to watch one, I recommend start with your rising sign. Not so much with the sun sign though, but if you feel like you want to check your sun sign, that's okay as well. And the reading is about Saturn transits because Saturn usually brings challenges and lessons to our lives. So the reading might be a little bit tough, but it's good to prepare you to see what comes in the next 3 months' time so you can navigate life better. And also, Saturn's transit is only one aspect of life. There are also other planets like Jupiter, Venus, Mars, and Mercury. Other planets, they're also in the sky helping us. So it's not just Saturn is putting all the pressure in your life. This is just only one aspect. Just like cooking, this is just one pinch of salt. But in this pot, there are also other ingredients. So don't take it too negatively, but just see it as a preparation for you to navigate through life more easily. Okay, so let's get started. For Aries risings and Aries moons, Saturn already shifted into your first house. on May 25th. Depending on where you are, I'm in Asia, so Saturn already shifted into your first house on May 25th. And Saturn will be in your first house for about 3 months' time until September 1st. Then Saturn will retrograde and return to the 12th house and remain until mid-February 2026. So for Aries risings and moons, for the past 2 years, it has been quite tough because Saturn is the lord of your 10th house and 11th house. 10th house rules the things you want to do, your career, your ambitions, and 11th house rules the recognition, income streams, and also the marketplace. So all these aspects are transiting in the house of dissolution, letting go, ending. So you may feel like the career is not moving forward or expanding as you like. And also 12th house is not a place for expanding. It's actually for you to restructure, to reconsider, to rethink. And also some of the social circles shift when Saturn transits the 12th house because it's a lord of your 11th house. And Saturn transit the first house is very different because that first house is the beginning. So you just experience the ending and now you're shifted into the beginning. And any planets shift into your first house is actually very important in Vedic astrology because any planets crosses the ascendant and goes retrograde. That makes these planets extremely important because that planet is trying to make you relearn and integrate all the lessons and traits related to the planets. Just like in the natal charts, when you have, for example, Venus in the first house, you become Venus. And if you have Mercury in the first house, you become Mercury. So that planet in the first house is trying to make you be like that planet. So that's the same as the transit. And for Saturn is the planet of pressure, responsibilities, and time. So the biggest lesson of Saturn transit the first house is time management. Like, how do you use your time? How do you use the time you have left to manage all the obligations, work, family, fulfill your responsibilities, and create the time and space to do the things that you love? So when people usually have Saturn transit the first house, immediately they will experience situations where a lot of their time is taken away. They feel like they don't have time to do everything, whether it's their jobs, obligations, family, or things they didn't choose to do, but they can't get away from. For example, you might be juggling a full-time job while also caring for elderly parents, or maybe you're working two shifts and taking care of your kids, or having a full-time job while doing a master degrees in the evening. So the most obvious thing, like I said, you will notice is that you feel like you're very busy. You don't have time for everything. And the first house in Vedic astrology rules the body. So you may notice that you don't have the same energy levels to move around, to work long hours, to do the same thing as you did before, especially if you're in the second half of life. So you need more time to rest. And also Saturn the transit, the first house brings some challenges to the body. It weakens the body. So it could bring up some health concerns. It's not always an illness, but some signals that need attention. And these issues may come from overwork. Like I said, you might be very busy doing a lot of things, stress, lack of rest. So for Aries moons, you will feel the most because Saturn is transiting on your moon sign. So Saturn is directly putting pressure on your emotions. So it can cause more stress on the emotional level and on your body. So it's very important for Aries moons to try to find ways to relax and reset. And also Ketu, the south node of the moon is transiting the sixth house. It indicates health issues could surface as well, especially those unresolved physical issues. So it can bring up chronic fatigue, digestive problems, stress-related ailments, and these issues often come from overwork, stress. So that's the same thing as Saturn transiting the first house. So different indications, but indicating the same thing. So for Aries risings and moons, you really need to pay attention to your energy levels. And also, it may not be health concerns. It could also be that you need to be more committed to restructuring your health. Maybe you need to be more committed to your exercises because you'll be very busy doing a lot of things and you don't have time to do exercises. And it would be a struggle for you to find time to do your exercises. But overall, Saturn transit the first house, it's a period of time where you feel like you be required to work really hard, take up responsibilities on personal and professional levels. Work-wise, people may depend on you to complete tasks, solve problems, deliver results, to complete jobs. And the transit can feel really frustrating, a lot of pressure, like work stress, tight schedule, and slow process because Saturn gives delays. So you don't see the process, the progress as you expected. And you just feel like you don't have time to get everything done. But all these situations will push you to become more organized, more focused, responsible, and better at handling pressure and managing your time. Like I said, Saturn is about time, managing your time, time management, and managing your pressure. And all these qualities, they're actually Saturn's very core essence. And also, those are the qualities for success. So Saturn transit the first house really wants you to learn to cultivate those qualities. This is the time for tremendous personal growth and transformation. That said, Saturn transit the first house is aspecting the 10th house. And Saturn is also the lord of your 10th house, transiting the first house. And at the same time, Jupiter will shift into your fourth house in June 10th, and will stay there for 1 year. And Jupiter is also aspecting, shooting the influence to the 10th house. So from June to August, 3 months' time, there will be a strong focus on career development or the things you really want to do, the bigger things, the ambitious. And if you don't have a work, if you're a stay-at-home mother, maybe you will put more effort and responsibilities in your parenting. Saturn will only be in your first house for 3 months' time, June, July, and August. But even in that short period of time, you will definitely feel the challenges and lessons right away. So pay close attention to what's unfolding during this period, because it can give you some insights into what to expect when Saturn re-enter your first house in 2026 in February. So note down what themes come up during this 3 months' time. Taurus risings and Taurus moon, Saturn has already shifted into your first house, your 12th house on May 25th. I'm in Asia, so depending where you are, Saturn shifts into your 12th house in Aries on May 25th and will stay here until September 1st. Then Saturn will retrograde back to your 11th house and remain there until mid-February 2026. So the 12th house is an unseen, unknown place because it's behind the ascendant. So it's behind you. It's not visible to your eyes. That's why it rules foreign places and hidden things. And 12th house is also a house of loss of money, loss of energy. So straight away, when Saturn transits in the 12th house, you can notice that it brings up some chronic health issues, concerns, and it will make you more aware of your health. And since 12th house is the house of losing your energy, so you might feel very drained, fatigued, lethargic, you feel like less motivated to do things under this influence. And 12th house in Vedic astrology also rules how we relax. So the sleep can also be disturbed during this transit. On the positive side, to look at this, you may start to realize that you need to work on restructuring, rebuilding your health, rebuilding your mind, or rebuilding your body. 12th house is a house of loss, expenses, spending your money, losing your money. So on the positive side, you can spend money on health, like general well-being, healing sessions, or hospitals. Maybe you have a checkup, or non-traditional or traditional healing methods, alternative treatments, or diets. And at the same time, for Taurus risings and moons, Rahu, the north node of the moon, is currently in your 11th house and will stay here until July 2026. So a year and a half. The 11th house rules friend circle, networking, money making, your income stream, fulfillment of desires, your recognition of your work. So when Rahu transits here, can amplify the desire to acquire more money. So you could potentially spend more money on investments, especially foreign investments or something new to you or related to high technology. And some of you might also be drawn to spend money on foreign travels or spiritual experiences, spiritual pursuits. And even though 12th house is a house of spending and losses, depending on Saturn's dignity in your natal chart, if Saturn is quite strong in your natal chart, you can actually accumulate more wealth because you be very, very careful with your spending choices. But if Saturn is poor in your natal charts, you might get into some bad or unnecessary expenses. So really pay attention to that. Work-wise, for Taurus risings and moons, Saturn is ruling your 10th house, transiting the 12th, which might make you feel less motivated or uncertain. Maybe you have some doubts about your career choices or career goals. And 12th house is the last house, is the ending. So there might be some shift around work. For example, 12th house is about escapism. So Saturn rules work and effort. So you might feel like leaving your job, you might try to avoid taking on certain responsibilities or additional responsibilities at work. 12th house is also a hidden house because it's behind you, behind the ascendant. So it rules the foreign places. So your work might shift into something more behind the scenes or enter a more low-key phase in your career development. Like I said, the Saturn transit the 12th house is not about expanding. It's about restructuring, rethinking, and your job situation can also shift into a more isolated situation. So for example, you might shift working from home, working remotely, working abroad, or your job requires more travels, or maybe you're working in a school setting or in a lab. And if you travel for work, that's quite likely because Jupiter will move into your 3rd house in June for 1 year. So Jupiter move into your 3rd house in June. That's also an indication you might move around. And for some of the Taurus risings and moons, you might even want to take a sabbatical year, taking a break from work. But Saturn transit the 12th house can also be very supportive for people who work in research, in labs, hospitals, school setting, international organizations, international companies, nonprofit organizations, or healing industry, helping industry, psychology, or foreign travels. For Taurus risings and moons, Saturn will only be in the 12th house for about 3 months' time. But even in that short period of time, you will definitely feel the challenges right away. So the last house is just like as important as the first house. So pay attention to what's unfolding during this time because it can give you some insights into what to expect when Saturn re-enter your 12th house in 2026. So that was for Taurus risings and moons. Gemini risings and Gemini moons. I'm in Asia, so Saturn has already shifted into 11th house from May 25th until September 1st. Then Saturn will retrograde back to the 10th house and remain there until mid-February 2026. For Gemini risings and moons, this is actually quite good because whether it's 10th house or 11th house, both houses are very great for Saturn. 11th house rules gains, money making, your income, recognition of your work, your efforts, titles, promotion. It also rules long-term dreams and goals, fulfillment of desires, our friend circle, social circle, marketplace. It also rules the elderly siblings and communities that you're part of. So for Gemini risings and moons, if you have been putting a lot of efforts into your career development in the past 2 years, which I believe you have, when Saturn moves into your 11th house, you will find doors and job opportunities are coming to you. There could have been opportunities for long-term job contracts if you're more of a casual worker or freelancer. So that secures the financial income, more stable. And the 11th house also rules gains. So you definitely have opportunities to increase your income slowly but surely because Saturn is not a fast moving planet. And perhaps through a pay rise or new job contracts or some new source of income, you can gain your profits more, which is particularly true as Jupiter will shift into your second house in June and stay there for 1 year. So from June to August, Saturn is shifted into your 11th house. Jupiter is in your second house. Both of them are in the money houses. So there might be opportunities to increase your pocket. At the same time, Rahu is transiting the 10th house. Rahu is the north node of the moon, and there's a strong desire to rise in your career. You have the strong rise, ambition to rise in your career development, to gain visibility and establish authority. So this ambition aligns with Saturn's transit in your 11th house very well, because the 11th house is about your long-term dreams and goals, your recognition of your efforts. So your drive to achieve career success during this period of time could also help you to lay a solid foundation for lasting achievements and more stable career path. That said, Saturn's still Saturn, so it will still bring some challenges and delays in the 11th house. So if you're in the business field or engaged in any type of entrepreneurial activity, there might be some regulations or rules which might slow down the income flow. Or you might need to go through like extra steps to meet demands of the market, of your work. So it's very important to follow rules, not cutting corners, especially Saturn transit the 11th house. It's about doing things step by step in a lawful abiding way. And as I mentioned just now, Rahu, the north node of the moon, is transiting the 10th house. And you will have the strong desire to achieve career goals quickly. And Rahu is not always taking things step by step. So even with that ambition, it's very crucial for you to stay grounded, follow proper procedures, proper process. Make sure you are covering your groundwork. Overall, Saturn transit the 11th house will still be very supportive of your efforts, slowly but surely. And the 11th house rules social circles and our network circle. For Gemini risings and moons, Saturn is the lord of your 8th house. 8th house is about changes and transformation. So when Saturn transits the 11th house, there might be some shifts into your friendships, social groups, benefactors, or the organization and community that you're part of. You might distance yourself from connections that no longer serve you because Saturn transit the 11th house helps you understand the value of true supportive friendship. So you will be looking for more meaningful connections. which will help you create a more solid and reliable network that supports your path. For Gemini risings and moons, Saturn will only be in your 11th house for about 3 months' time. But even in that short period of time, you will definitely feel the shift right away. And luckily, during the same time, Jupiter will be in your second house, money house, like I said, and Rahu in the 10th house. So the second house, 11th house, and the 10th house, your career, your money, all these three houses being activated. So there's a strong focus on success and money. So pay close attention to what's unfolding during this period of time. It can give you an insight into what to expect when Saturn re-enter your 11th house in 2026. Cancer risings and Cancer moon. Saturn has already shifted into your 10th house in Aries on May 25th, and it will stay here for 3 months' time until September 1st. Then Saturn will retrograde back and return to the ninth house and remain there until mid-February 2026. Saturn traveling through the 10th house is actually a very big deal in Vedic astrology because each planet has their own key houses, and Saturn's key houses are 10th and 6th. And especially Saturn is actually doing great in the 10th house. 10th house rules the bigger things that we want to do in life, our ambitions, the bigger things, and our career path, work environment, social status, and reputation. And the transit is not just about the career, it's actually what you're here to build and contribute to the world. Even though you're a stay-at-home mother, raising a child is also a bigger thing than you. So some people, when have Saturn transit the 10th house, maybe this is the time that they decide to have a child because that's a big commitment. And also that's the bigger thing than themselves. When Saturn transits the 10th house, it is a time you will gain a lot of clarity and sense of direction, where you want to do, where you want to go in life. You will feel a strong inner push to take serious steps towards the things that you truly want to achieve in life. Like I said, if you want to have a child, you'll probably prepare yourself to do so. And you will start to take important actions towards your professional goals, committing to long-term plans, working hard on your status, your reputation, and making real progress in your career development, or readjusting or redefining your career path. But since Saturn will only be the 10th house for 3 months' time, the long-term effects and progress of your career development will only manifest more fully when Saturn re-enter the 10th house in 2026. Then Saturn will stay there for two years and then 2 months' time. And you may want to take notes of what themes come up during these 3 months' time, June, July, and August, these 3 months' time. So they can offer some insights into what might unfold when Saturn re-enter your 10th house. Saturn is the planet of effort and work. 10th house also rules career and responsibilities. So it can bring a heavy workload and increased duties. And you may find yourself very busy with work, with the things that you really want to do in life. And the transit can also bring some other life responsibilities, for example, like parenting or health or anything else that requires your attention and effort. And you might find it very challenging to manage all the responsibilities and duties, obligations. But on the positive note, Saturn transit the 10th house can also bring more structure, order, discipline, and maturity to your professional path. And Saturn usually brings delays and challenges, but all these things like delays, challenges, or mistakes that you make, it will make you become more organized, productive, ordered in how you handle your work, how you handle your pressure. Saturn transit the 10th house is aspecting, is looking at the 4th house. It rules your inner world. inner peace, emotions, sense of security, and home life. So you may start to neglect your emotional well-being and personal life because you're overly focused on your work, your external achievements, and external responsibilities. And this can also lead to imbalanced situation between your work and your home life. So pay close attention to that. And that is also the lesson that you need to learn to cultivate when Saturn transit the 10th house, how to navigate and find balance between work and life. But overall, 10th house is a very good house for Saturn. And Saturn transit the 10th house is really about taking the important actions towards the things you really want to do in life. It's about growth through perseverance and helping you to lay a strong foundation for long-term success. For Leo risings and Leo moons, Saturn has already shifted into your ninth house in Aries on May 25th and will stay here until September 1st. Then Saturn will retrograde and return to the eighth house on September 2nd and stay here until mid-February 2026. Ninth house rules higher learning, higher education, your belief systems, religious views, your gurus, mentors, teachers. It also rules publication and foreign travels, long distance travels. So when Saturn, the planets of discipline and reality checks, move into the ninth house, it brings seriousness and structure to all these topics. It's not a casual or easy transit, especially it's about your mind, your belief system. So it is a time of testing and maturing and realigning your values, your true beliefs. For example, if you are studying spiritual topics or philosophy or doing teacher training abroad, but suddenly things don't go as planned. For example, you might fail a major exam, or your visa gets delayed, or the teacher that you looked up to disappoints you. So the outer circumstances may force you to reevaluate your beliefs, and whether it's spiritual, academic, or cultural. So it is a time for growth. And also the beliefs that you held for years might start to feel shaky, outdated. And Saturn is very practical, realistic. So anything too wishy-washy, idealistic, vague will be challenged or tested, restructured during this transit. So it's not a very comfortable transit, especially because it's testing our belief system or religious views. But through deeper reflection, stronger desire to explore or shift in your belief system could spark curiosity and lead you to a higher learning, even higher education, and maybe lead you to a new teacher or other learning situations. Maybe you need to find a new guru, a new mentor, and you will realize that during this transit as well. And Saturn is a bit of loner. Ninth house is about learning. So when Saturn transits the ninth house, it's actually great for self-learning, self-study, or researching. With Saturn's influence in the ninth house, you will take a more disciplined approach to learning, to your studies, which is great for deep diving into subjects that require patience, introspection, focus, like for example, like philosophy, astrology, spiritual subjects, or law, because ninth house also rules the law. And for Leo risings and moons, the Saturn will be in your ninth house June, July, and August. And Jupiter will shift into your 12th house from June and stay there for 1 year. 12th house and ninth house, they both have the spiritual connotation to it. And 12th house rules expenses. Jupiter transit here could also indicate some big spending. So you might spend money on learning, on traveling, spiritual pilgrimage, or work related travels. And when Saturn transits the ninth house, there might be some teachers, mentors, or even gurus coming in your life. And they can offer a different viewpoints, teach you some important or very challenging life lessons. And these figures, teaching figures like mentors, gurus, and teachers, they can also demand more dedication and structure from you. So Saturn transit here can definitely bring some tests to your relationship with your teachers, your mentors, pushing you to reflect on how open you are to guidance, to suggestions, to teachings, authority, or spiritual discipline. On a more mundane level, for those who working in teaching, training, giving instructions, education, mentorship, law, or religious related areas, travel-based jobs, or anything involving international connections, foreign trades, these transits can bring increased responsibilities and workload, which is good. In general, there could be increase the work trips as well, like business trip, because ninth house is about long distance travel, and Saturn is the significator of work. And for Leo risings and moons, if you're students or in any type of learning process, there might be some delay in completing your course because Saturn brings delays. And it's also possible that there's a lot of self-study as Saturn is a bit of loner, like I said. And you might also change your subjects, your course, because Saturn will make you reconsider what is best for your future. But since Saturn will only be here for 3 months' time, you may want to note down what themes show up during these 3 months' time so you can have a better idea what to expect when Saturn re-enter your ninth house in 2026, so you can navigate better. Virgo risings and Virgo moons. Saturn has shifted into your eighth house on May 25th, and it will stay here for 3 months until September 1st. Then September 2nd, Saturn will retrograde and return to your seventh house and remain there until mid-February 2026. So when Saturn shifts signs, immediately it brings the challenges and lessons that you need to learn. And you could also make mistakes regarding the topics related to the house. But like I said in the beginning, Saturn is the planet that brings lessons and challenges, but there are also other stars, planets in the sky helping. For example, like Venus, Jupiter, or other stars and planets. So Saturn only represents one aspect of life. For Virgo risings and moons, Saturn is the lord of your sixth house, transiting the eighth. Sixth house rules work, and Saturn is also a significator of work and effort. So when Saturn transits the eighth house, it could bring some disturbance in your career or restructuring in the work situation. For example, you might go through some changes in your career development, change of responsibilities, change of reporting line, change of your department. Or some people might even choose to change their career direction voluntarily during this transit. But because the transit only lasts for 3 months' time, so if you can't really stand your job, you probably would do it. And the good thing is that Jupiter is currently in the 10th house and will shift into the 11th house. So both 10th house and 11th house are good house for jobs, career opportunities during these 3 months' time, June, July, and August. So if you do change your job, you can still find another one fairly quickly. So no need to worry about that. And Saturn transit the eighth house can make you trouble more for work because Saturn transit here can bring some instability in your career because the eighth house is a house of transformation and changes. So when the significator of work, which is Saturn transiting in the house of not stable, you might be moving around because of your work, like shift around, or there might be some shift in your position, or both. However, Saturn transit the eighth house is very supportive for those working in healing, in helping, medical related, psychology, astrology, insurance, banking, archaeology, or research. As Saturn is the lord of your sixth house, transiting the eighth, it can also bring up some health issues, health concerns to the surface, particularly the chronic, hidden, or slow developing conditions. So it's very good to schedule a health checkup for Virgo risings and moons, just to be sure that everything is okay. And also, it's a preparation for Saturn re entering your eighth house next year. If there's any health concerns arising, you can deal with them fairly quickly. And Saturn is the lord of your eighth house, transiting the eighth. Sixth house also rules habits, routines, your daily routines. So you may change or adopt new habits, new routines. For example, you might adopt a new disciplined lifestyle to improve your health because there might be some health issues arising. So that's why you need to change your diets, change your routines, change your lifestyle, or accommodate your work performance. Like the change that you make is because you want to improve your work efficiency. Eighth house also rules other people's money, other people's resources, your spouse's money, business partners' resources, joint resources, or shared finances. So during this time, your partner might be dealing with some financial challenges. It doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It really depends on the whole chart and where you're at in your life. For example, it could be as minor as paperwork back and forth with your spouse's investments, or your spouse is buying something big so they can provide less support, less money to the household. And of course, it could also mean they are dealing with some financial issues. So, like I said, it really depends on the whole chart and also where you're at in your life. And when that happens, you will need to take on more responsibilities financially to make sure things don't go wrong. Either whether it's in your household or in a business setup, in a business partnership. And Saturn transit the eighth house, it shows that it's better for you to get into the position where you don't have to depend on other people, other people's resources and support. And this will be the long-term lesson to cultivate when Saturn re-enter your eighth house in 2026. Because when Saturn re-enter your eighth house, it will stay there for 2 years and 2 months. So the lessons and also the qualities that you need to cultivate, you will have a long time, like at least 2 years time to learn. When Saturn transits the eighth house, it's aspecting looking at the second house, your own money, your pockets, your savings accounts, your resources. And eighth house and second houses, they are the money axis. So for Virgo risings and moons, in addition to the focus on your joint resources with your partner, whether it's romantic partner or business partner, you will also need to learn to deal with your own finances in a more responsible way. And Saturn aspecting, looking at the second house, it puts pressure on your money situation. And it actually helps you restructure your finances because you might feel like there's a sense of lack or insecurity about money. So you might make more money, save more money with this transit. Eighth house is also a very psychological house because it's about transformation, deep inner change. So you may also find that certain long-held beliefs start to shift due to these external changes, external events. And this could involve your views on relationships, intimacy, money, work, and health, or daily habits. And it may feel quite hard to navigate, and you will probably feel a little bit lost. But the tip for this transit is to not to resist changes. That said, Saturn will only be in your eighth house for 3 months' time. So you can consider this 3 months time, June, July, August, as a preview. And you can also note it down what happened so you can have an idea of what to expect when Saturn re-enter your eighth house in February next year. Libra risings and Libra moon. Saturn has shifted into your seventh house on May 25th, and it will stay here until September 1st. On September 2nd, Saturn will transit retrograde back and return to the sixth house and remain in your sixth house until mid-February 2026. So seventh house rules all types of relationships, connections, both personal, professional. And it rules collaborations, contractual alliances, negotiations, and public interactions, marketplace, one-on-one communication. Basically, this is the house, how well you cooperate with other people. And on the romantic level, when Saturn shifts into the seventh house, it creates delays, misunderstandings, or challenges in relationships. It may also test the strength of your partnerships. So if you have any issues that were swept under the rug, it will come to the surface during this transit. And this can either strengthen the relationship through mutual work, if you and your spouse, you and your partner are willing to do the work, or leads to distance or separation if the foundation is not so solid, or if the relationship is actually coming to an end. Then Saturn transit the seventh house can make you gain more clarity that you don't want to be in the relationship. So this really depends on where you're at in your relationship situation. So it doesn't mean when Saturn transits the seventh house, it will lead to separation. Sometimes it strengthens the relationship. And Saturn's energy is cold and shrinking. So you could feel distant from your partner, or you are carrying more emotional weight in the relationship. Perhaps your partner is preoccupied, very busy, unavailable, or they might be dealing with some stress, life stress, studies or work or family issues, family responsibilities. That's why they don't have time for you. And your partner might be going through some challenging time. And so they will leave you all the responsibilities on your shoulders. So you need to learn to be more responsible for both of you to carry on this relationship. Especially for Libra moons, Saturn transit the seventh house is aspecting your moon position. So you'll feel more stressed. And Saturn usually make you have a deeper reflection and introspection. So all these events, the outer circumstances could help you reevaluate what you expect from relationships and how you can contribute to them and how you can make your connections more meaningful and aligned with your values. And this applies to personal and professional relationships. On the positive side, it can also lead to more stable and long-term commitment once you pass the test. Like I said, the Saturn transit the seventh house doesn't mean you are going to separate from your partner. Sometimes it strengthens and it helps your approach to relationships become more mature, realistic, and responsible. So for Libra risings, Saturn is ruling your fifth house and transiting the seventh. Romantic connection may shift towards long-term commitments, like more serious commitments. And Saturn brings maturity and responsibility. You may look for or attract to a partner who is older or more mature or more serious under this transit. On a professional level, seventh house rules other people, your interactions with other people. So you may feel restrained in all kinds of negotiation situations, collaborations. There might be some delays in contracts, signing contracts, communications, delays in collaborations, or doing things together, completing things together. And this transit is especially noticeable if your work depends on making connections, forming alliances, networking, deal making, negotiating terms, or if your job needs to involve other people to complete, you will feel it the most. Seventh house also rules the marketplace, and Saturn transit here could slow things down. For example, it slows down any buying, selling activities, sales, marketing, one-to-one services like coaching, consultation, or industry that relies on funding may feel stuck. For example, like investors, they take longer time to decide if they want to fund this project in order for you to continue this work, or the contracts might be slow to finalize or need restructuring, revising, or you might need to prove your worth in a collaboration situation. If your work involves any of these areas, you need to be more patient. If you're already in a business partnership or some sort of collaborative relationship, it may go through a review. Like there might be differences in interest, goals, or lack of trust may surface in your partnership. So you'll need to learn to deal with the situation more delicately. And in some cases, Saturn transit here could end a business partnership that no longer serves you. But at the same time, it's also possible that you will want to start a new business on your own, especially seventh house is the marketplace, enterprise, and business. Saturn transit here, you might feel a pull to start something of your own, whether it's a business, project, or stepping into self-employment. Jupiter will shift into the 10th house in June and will stay there for 1 year. So Jupiter transit the 10th house is actually very good because it opens up opportunities in things you want to do in life. It brings opportunities to your career path, career development. It's a time of growth and expansion, but it also comes with more responsibilities, workload. So together, Saturn transit the 7th, Jupiter transit the 10th, it could indicate a powerful window for starting something independently. And since this transit only lasts for 3 months, things may not manifest so quickly, but the seed will be planted there. So you may want to take note what themes show up during June, July, and August, the 3 months time. So you can have some insights into what to expect when Saturn re-enter your 7th house in 2026. Scorpio risings and moons. Saturn has shifted into your 6th house on May 25th and it will stay there for 3 months until September 1st. On September 2nd, Saturn will retrograde back and return to the 5th house and stay there until mid-February 2026. 6th house rules work, lifestyle, routines, habits, and everyday activities. And 6th house rules actually more difficult things in life. For example, like your health, disease, conflicts, litigation, any situation that's lack of balance. Like debts, poverty, disagreements, enemies, exploitation. 6th house also rules people who are in trouble situations, people who are in the lower rank. And it rules small animals and service, like helping other people. So with Saturn's influence transiting here, some imbalanced situation related to these areas will come to the surface. So you will start to realize that your body, your work, your lifestyle might need some adjustments. And usually your lifestyle, your body, your health, and your work, these areas, these three areas, they are intertwined together. So health-wise, Saturn transit here brings a reality check. You'll become more aware of your routines, your habits, your lifestyle. For example, working late or going back to late, or you might be eating convenience food because you don't have time, or you don't have time to take care of your body. You don't have time to do exercises. These health concerns may become more noticeable and start to affect your well-being. So it's time to let go of certain habits, certain lifestyle, which no longer useful to your life or to your work. And you need to find a better way, more efficient way of doing things. So Saturn transit the sixth house is actually a major time for restructuring and realignment, readjustment in many, many areas of life, your health, your work, your lifestyle. And sixth house is one of Saturn's key houses. Saturn is connected to the element earth, which aligns with the natural way of life, the natural flow of how nature works. That's why if your routines, your habits are against the natural rhythm, Saturn transit here will push you to put a lot of effort to sort out any health or lifestyle issues, which is good because whatever improvements, whatever adjustment you make during Saturn transit the sixth house will lay out a foundation for your health for the next 20 years. Work-wise, sixth house is below the seventh house. It's a house of supporting other people. That's why it rules work, because that's the service that we do for other people, employment. When Saturn transit here, the focus will be revolving around your work. Perhaps the way you work, how you work needs some adjustment. Or there might be some challenges in your work situation or in your relationships with your colleagues. And these situations could bring a reality check to your work. For example, the stress that you carry, the dynamics in your work environment. Some of you may even choose to leave your job during this time. And Saturn transit sixth house can also bring work that feels repetitive, boring, dull, uninspiring. And you might feel stuck doing the tasks that you don't enjoy. But if you're the type of person who enjoys stable routine work, then this transit is actually good for you. It's very supportive. And during Saturn transit the sixth house, there will be some adjustments needs to be made around work, your habits, your health. So like I said, oftentimes these three areas influence each other. So the transit is actually a fundamental transformation. And also, like I said, whatever adjustment you make during this transit will lay out a foundation for the 20 years time. And especially your habits, your lifestyle, your work, also your health. These areas, they are big areas. So be patient with yourself. That said, since Saturn will transit the sixth house only for 3 months, you may want to take note of what things show up during this period of time so you can have an idea what to expect when Saturn re-enter your sixth house in 2026. And Saturn re-enter your sixth house will stay there for 2 years and 2 months. So you have a longer time to readjust. Sagittarius risings and moons. Saturn shifts into your fifth house on May 25th and will stay here until September 1st. On September 2nd, it will retrograde back to the fourth house and stay there until mid-February 2026. Fifth house rules creative expressions, intelligence, education, learning, children, creative artistic talents, entertainment. It also rules all the fun things and pleasures in life. Fifth house rules the speculative business and investments. So Saturn transit here is not an ideal time for risky investments or gambling, but it's very good time for long-term financial planning and organizing your money because Saturn transit the fifth house aspecting both on your 11th house and second house. So Saturn transit the fifth house is looking at the 11th house and also second house. And at the same time, Jupiter will shift into your eighth house in June, also looking at aspecting the second house. So the second house is quite focused, and the money could be the focus during June, July, and August of this combination. and again in February to January in 2026. So this is a good time to get your finances in order. And you might also become more disciplined around investments under this influence, which can be beneficial in the long run. But since Saturn will only be in your fifth house for 3 months' time from June to August, you may have an idea of how you want to do it, how you are going to plan your financial plan. But how this is going to manifest, become more concrete, will only when Saturn re-enter your fifth house in February 2026. Because by then you have 2 years time to structure your financial situation, also your investment plan. Fifth house rules hobbies and interests. Saturn is a planet of effort and work. So Saturn transit here will help you recognize the value of your work with your creative ideas, with your mind. It could also be your creations, like creations of your hobbies. For example, if you like to sew, and maybe you sew a bag, and then that's your hobby. When Saturn transit the fifth house, you become more serious. You want to monetize your hobby, one of your hobbies, one of your interests into a career or into work. You become more serious about your projects. But again, because Saturn will only be here for 3 months' time and go back to the fourth house. So you may not be able to fully manifest this idea just yet. But still, the seed will be planted. So when Saturn re-enter your fifth house next year, you will have time, and also things will really take off and the results begin to unfold gradually within that 2 years and 2 months time. Fifth house is a house of all the fun things and pleasures. So Saturn is the lord of the third house transiting your fifth house. It shows that you could find joy and fun through work, learning, teaching, convincing other people with your ideas. And Saturn is the lord of the third house transiting the fifth. It's a third from third if we're counting from the third house. So you'll be utilizing your intellectual and communicative abilities into creative expressions. For example, how you present your ideas, your teachings in your presentations or parenting. Especially it's a third from third because Saturn rules your third house transiting the fifth house. You'll probably feel like you need to upgrade some of the skills and to help you to express yourself in a more creative way or in a more efficient way. For example, like AI software, drawing software, presentation skills or drawing skills. And Saturn transit the fifth house could also make studies or your learning more serious, dry, and requires more hard work. And fifth house rules kids. And if you don't have kids, then it indicates your followers, your mentees, your students. So, two scenarios. The first one is if you have kids for Sagittarius risings and moons, Saturn transit here can create some challenges in your relationship with them. Or it could be that your children become a hard work for you because they are causing trouble. Or it could be that you start planning their education funds. And it could also be that your kids, they are experiencing some personal challenges that cause your concern that you need to support them. So when they are having some difficult situations outside the world, when they bring him back to the home, it can also create the tension between you two. And if you don't have kids, then this transit may bring a lot of may bring more serious structure tone to your role as a mentor or teacher or a guide. You could feel a heavier sense of responsibilities towards your students or mentees or your followers. Some of them may go through some personal challenges that require your support, your extra support, patience, and boundaries. And you might also question your effectiveness in your mentor role, in your relationship with your mentees, your followers. And it is time to build stronger foundations in how you guide and influence other people. And it might feel like hard work at times because It's like you're parenting your kids, even though you don't have kids, but those mentees and followers, they are just like your kids. But it can create a long-term growth and maturity for both you and your mentees. Capricorn risings and moons. Saturn has shifted into your fourth house on May 25th and will stay here for 3 months' time until September 1st. September 2nd, Saturn will retrograde and return to your third house and remain in your third house until mid-February 2026. Saturn transit the fourth house brings responsibilities, obligations in your domestic surroundings, in your home environments and family matters. So for Capricorn risings and moons, Jupiter will shift into your seventh house in June, stay there for 1 year, which brings expansion for partnerships, expansion in your marketplace, business collaborations, and growth in your clientele. So Saturn transit the fourth house, Jupiter transit the seventh house, this combination. During June to August, this could indicate the growth in the family dynamics. For example, a family member is getting married. So you might be supporting, organizing, or hosting. So there might be more responsibilities. Or someone in the family is having a baby. Or you become more involved in family related events or a family business. You could also be buying a house because seventh house is about signing the contracts or starting a new office lease with your business partner. So these are all expansion opportunities and expansion events. Happy things, even though it may require some efforts and responsibilities, but you're still willing to do it. On the other hand, Saturn usually brings challenges and delays in the house that it's in. So this combination, Saturn transit the fourth house, Jupiter in your seventh house from June to August. It could also be that marketplace, your clients are thriving, expanding, but the home life may feel a little bit ignored because you don't have time for your home life or your emotional well-being. So there might be some tension in the home environment, and you will need to consciously work on finding a healthy work-life balance under this influence. But Saturn will only be in your fourth house for 3 months' time. So take note what themes come up so you can have a better idea when Saturn re-enter your fourth house next year. Saturn transit the fourth house, one of the most noticeable thing is that it brings up home-related issues that need attention or repair. So for example, like water issues, water problems, leaking, electricity issues, your floor, toilets, like small problems. But because they happen in your home where you're supposed to relax, so it can disturb your inner peace. And apart from physical repairs, challenges might also come through loved ones. Perhaps your family members, your spouse need your support or attention. And other things like property dealings, contracts, or transport issues. Resolution of domestic issues, home environments may also slow down under this influence. So be patient with the process, like fixing things, repairing things, signing contracts, or issues with your transportation. Fourth house rules the family. It rules the mother in Vedic astrology. So pay attention to mother's health, or it could indicate some family member is going through some tough time in life and they need your support. Overall, domestic issues and family matters can demand more of your attention and require you to step up and deal with it. In general, when Saturn transits the fourth house, is aspecting the 10th house. So there is a home and work adjustments that needs to be made. Like I said, finding the balance between the home life and work life is very important under this transit. Aquarius risings and moons. Saturn has shifted into your third house on May 25th and will stay here until September 1st. On September 2nd, Saturn will go retrograde and return to the second house and remain in your second house until mid-February 2026. Third house in Vedic astrology is a fighting house, like how you fight through life, how you fight to fulfill your desires, and the way you deal with challenges, overcome problems, and how to fight for what you want. And it's also a house of getting things done. So it's a very action-orientated house. It's a tough house. And Saturn is a tough planet. So Saturn is actually doing great when it transits the third house. Saturn transit here will make you put a lot of effort in work or in the things that you want to accomplish, the desires that you want to fulfill, which is good because you are competing with other people that are also having the same desires. And if you don't have a job, the transits can also help you to overcome the trivial troubles of daily life. The ultimate goal of this transits, when Saturn transits the third house, is to strengthen your ability to solve problems and overcome obstacles. Saturn here tests your dedication, commitment to achieve your goals, fulfill your desires. So you may find yourself working harder, which is good. And sometimes it may also require upgrading your knowledge, your skills to achieve them. As a result, it can lead to learning. But third house learning is about learning some skills and tools to help you to navigate to achieve some goals. And fifth house learning is about learning the methodology, the ideas. And ninth house is about higher education. Like you take something into a higher learning, or you find a guru to teach you something really difficult. It could be religious knowledge, religious wisdom, or spiritual knowledge. There's some differences between these three houses. And third house rules the mind, thought process, our communication, teamwork, your teammates, your relationship with your teammates. So Saturn transit here can bring some challenges in areas related to communication. Saturn slows down or complicates how you express yourself, especially with your teammates. So you might feel like you can't express yourself very clearly or the way you want. So there might be a sense of being misunderstood, or outer circumstances make you cautious with your words. So for example, maybe you are in a higher position where you need to speak properly, present professional knowledge, or even manage other people. So you can't just speak casually. And Saturn transit the third house can also delay the communication process. For example, you might find yourself having to explain the same thing over and over again, or people just don't understand your instructions. So it pushes you to improve your communication skills or learn new ways to communicate. For example, like AI tools, drawing software, or other methods to help you to present your ideas more clearly. And not just with your teammates, sometimes it's also about how you give instructions to other people. With Jupiter shifting into your sixth house in June, Jupiter will stay in your sixth house for 1 year. It brings more workload and competition. So it's very important to improve your skills, expand your knowledge, or use the right tools to help you to handle your job more effectively. So again, it leads to learning, like learning something, learning new tools, learning new way to communicate or to complete your job more effectively. And the third house rules short distance travels. So Saturn transit here, Saturn rules work. So there might be some work related trips, or you might start commuting for work, going to different places, different locations for meetings and workshops. Saturn will only be your third house for 3 months' time. June, July, and August. So it's good to learn something different skill wise. Learn a new skill, new tool, new technology, media skills, or anything innovative, anything could help you deliver your work and communication more effectively, like I said. But like I said, the Saturn will only be the third house for 3 months' time. So you can also note down what themes show up during this period of time. And it can provide you an insight into what to expect when Saturn re-enter your third house in 2026. Pisces risings and moons. Saturn has shifted into your second house on May 25th, and it will stay here for 3 months until September 1st. And on September 2nd, Saturn will retrograde back and return to the first house and remain in your first house until mid-February 2026. So Saturn transit the second house will bring some challenges around money. And for Pisces risings and moons, you need to pay attention to this reading because money is a very interesting topic. So it can create a lot of stress. So Saturn transit the second house doesn't mean you're going to have some serious financial trouble, but you might experience some financial delays or general sense of constraints during this period of time. And it could be that the outer circumstances naturally create some financial restrictions. For example, maybe you just quit your job and decided to take 2 months break. So naturally you don't have the income to support you. Or maybe you've taken out a mortgage to buy a house, or you've committed to an investment plan, so you don't have enough cash. And in those cases, you naturally need to be more intentional and organized with your spending. And for Pisces risings and moons, Saturn is ruling the 12th house, transiting the second house. It could definitely indicate a potential loss of money. And if you want to avoid unnecessary loss, try to redirect that manifestation, loss of money, into something purposeful. For example, like you can put your money into investment plan, or paying off debts, paying off mortgage, or donation to charity. Charity is always a very powerful remedy in Chinese astrology. And on top of that, it creates very good karma. And another possibility that you feel a sense of constraint is that you're consciously restricting, controlling your spending. Maybe you're saving up for something big. For example, if you're going to Peru, you're going to do a world travel, a wedding, buying a house, down payment for a car, or relocation. So the sense of constraint can also actually help you to become more disciplined and organized with your money situations. Overall, the transit, Saturn transit the second house, could bring you long-term financial stability, change the way you use the money, how you use the money, your relationship with money. But for Pisces risings and moons, Saturn will only be in your second house for 3 months' time. So you may want to take note of what themes show up during this period, so you can have an idea what to expect when Saturn re-enter your second house in 2026. With Saturn transiting the second house, and Jupiter will shift into your fifth house in June. Jupiter will shift into your fifth house and stay there for 1 year. So this combination from June, July to August could potentially bring some gains through business, through investments, or through your own efforts, through your work, your talents. So like I said, the Saturn transit the second house doesn't mean you're going to have a financial trouble. It doesn't deny financial gains, but it often brings challenges and delays, or a sense of fear, sense of lack. For Pisces risings and moons, Rahu, the north node of the moon, will be traveling in your first house on its own between June to August. So when Saturn shifts into the second house, Rahu in the first house will make you feel bold and adventurous. At the same time, Jupiter transit the fifth house can also expand your confidence in risky ventures. And Saturn is transiting the second house. And Saturn is the lord of the 12th house. So there might be some potential loss in your money situation. So it's very important to stay grounded and make sure to maintain enough cash flow to deal with unexpected challenges. Overall, when Saturn transit the second house, it's more of a sense of lack, sense of constraint. And sense of lack can actually help you to save more money and help you to deal with money in a more organized way. Okay, so that was a wrap for Saturn shifts into Aries for 12 zodiac signs in 2025. And I hope this video gave you some helpful information, helpful insights into what's coming into the 3 months, and also to help you to navigate the journey. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.